Good morning, welcome back to the Dudley Bug. Today, being as we're nearly at Christmas, I thought I'd do a more spooky one, and it's going to be about something called the stone tape theory, which may be an explanation for ghosts. So I'm actually back at the ruins of the Cluniac Priory on Priory Park in Dudley. Town centre's only about 2 minutes walk that way. If you like priories and things like that, monasteries, I have done a previous video, one of my early ones, about the story of this place, Dudley Priory. Might be worth checking out. So, the stone tape theory, as it's called. What's it all about? Well, the idea has been around at least a couple of 100 years, and I'll bring up some dates in a minute. But it was actually given the name the stone tape theory after the BBC did a Christmas television play back in 1972. Written by a fella called Nigel Neal. Nigel Neal had written a lot of scripts and stories for radio, television and film from the 50s onwards. He did things like the Quatermass experiment, all that kind of stuff. So it was more of a science fiction writer. And I said he wrote the stone tape. And I do remember it being on. I mean, I was quite young. I remember looking in the the Radio Times, and seeing that it was on. I think it was on, might have been Boxing Day on BBC Two. So what's it all about? Well, the stone tape theorises that our surroundings can sometimes, when something happens that's quite distressing or very emotional, it can absorb what's happening. The surroundings, the stone can actually absorb what's happening, a bit like an old style magnetic tape, and then replay it back at a later date. So that basically is the stone tape theory. So I'm going to go on to explain how they think it might work. So, I did say that it wasn't given the name the stone tape till 1972, but the idea had been around for, or has been around for, a couple of 100 years. Certainly in 1838, a fella called Charles Babbage, who was a mathematician, wrote a book called The Ninth Bridgewater Treatise. It's a highfalutin title, isn't it? And he postulated in that spoken words could leave permanent impressions in the air and in the atmosphere around them. And then in the 1880s, the Society for Psychical Research started using this term place memory, which ties in closely with another similar idea that people can hold an object in their hand, a ring or whatever that used to belong to somebody, and it holds a memory in there of this person's personality. So some psychics can read these objects and absorb the memory that's held within them. Then in 1938, a fellow called H.H. Price, he was a professor of logic at Oxford University, and he was actually president of the Society for Psychical Research at the time, and he referred to memory traces. And then in 1961, another archaeologist called Thomas Lethbridge wrote a book called Ghosts and Ghouls, which also builds on this idea that inanimate objects can record stuff. Now, it's sometimes referred to as residual hauntings. So what we're saying there is, we're not saying that if you saw this ghost, this recording playing back, the person isn't actually there. They're not aware. They're not wandering around going, oh, woe is me, oh, and all this like Marley or something out of a Christmas carol. It's not a person. It's a recording. So it also, of course, explains why sometimes people have reported seeing these apparitions that seem to be floating in the air. Are they perhaps walking on a floor, a wooden floor that's no longer there, but the stone walls still are? So, how's this stone tape theory supposed to actually work if it is a recording that's playing back? Well, main school of thought on the stone tape is that especially in places like this, you've got an awful lot of limestone and sandstone, and both limestone and sandstone have a very high quartz content in them. Quartz is a natural form of silica, and we do know, it is a physical fact, that quartz can absorb and store energy, and sometimes when a quartz crystal is compressed, it will emit an electrical charge, and that as I said, that's just a physical fact. Now, as I said, limestone and sandstone have a high quartz content, so maybe it is the places like this have millions and millions of small grains of quartz within the masonry that can act as some kind of magnetic recording, that when given the right trigger can replay that recording. Oh, bit porky. So, I talked about the fact that silica in the limestone and sandstone could possibly absorb incidents and play them back. And as I said, it could be that sometimes when people have stated that they've had these apparitions in front of them, they very often say they have a feeling of cold. Could it be that the quartz is drawing energy out the atmosphere to yeah, I'm alright, mate. To power, charge the battery up to power the playback, maybe. Now, things that it definitely isn't. It's not what some people would call a time slip. In other words, you are not, as the witness, the person watching it, the observer, you are not suddenly dropping backwards in time in a time warp and looking at something that happened hundreds of thousands or thousands of years ago. It's not one of them. And as I've said, if it is a recording, it means the person or persons you're looking at aren't aware of you because they're not actually there. It's not the spirit of a person, it's just a recording. I keep having to move spots because there's quite a wind going on, which is knocking all my kit over and interfering with the recording as well. Anyway, what the hell's that? So, we've talked about the fact it could be an explanation, residual hauntings, it could be the quartz in all the masonry, and the fact that it tends to work or apparently work, when there are a lot of emotions, fear, grief, sadness about. I suppose to me, the classic example of a possible stone tape recording is up in York, with a bloke claiming to have seen a section of legionaries, Roman soldiers, walk straight past him. Maybe. If the stone tape theory does hold together, there doesn't seem to be any real way of us recording the recordings. What I mean by that is, say if I was here now and some Cluniac monk came shuffling past me and I saw him, there doesn't seem to be any way of us using a GoPro or something like that to record this image coming past. So there doesn't seem to be any definitive evidence or proof. I know people sometimes use electromagnetic detection equipment, and some people even download basically ghost apps that apparently pick up on the atmosphere in an area. Maybe, maybe not. All I can say to that is I won't be downloading one anytime soon. But there we are. That's the stone tape theory. The neatness of it is it all fits together, doesn't it? The fact that people say they sometimes feel very cold just before this recording plays back, drawing energy out the atmosphere. The fact that they sometimes seem to be floating on air or walking on air because they're on a wooden surface that no longer exists. And the feeling that some people get, similar to what I mentioned about psychometry, where people can pick up objects and get an impression of the person around it. People very often mention feelings of melancholy or dread or even fear just before the visuals take place, or sometimes not even with any visuals taking place. Are they perhaps picking up on a kind of non-visual playback of something that happened a long time ago? So, that's the stone tape theory. What do I think of it? Well, I think it fits nicely. But I think, to me, it's a bit like or the Loch Ness Monster, or flying saucers, or the Abominable Snowman, the Yeti. What I mean by that is, it's a lovely idea. Personally, I don't believe it. Make your own mind up on that. Hope you've enjoyed it. Merry Christmas. And don't forget, keep out the Oss Road. One last thought before I go. What about if I'm wrong and the stone tape theory is real? What then?